Good morning and happy November. Yeah, good morning. Good morning. We're in a series called Community Coming Together in God's Love. We're talking about politics. And if you weren't with us for the past few weeks, you're like, I'm glad I missed the last few weeks. I'm preaching today, and then next week, Pastor Stan's going to wrap this whole thing up, talking about attachments and stuff like that. But today, in case you missed the last few weeks, here's a quick recap. The recap has been this, okay? The question that we want to ask during this whole series is this: are we willing to put our faith ahead of politics? And the big question was, or the big statement that I think a lot of Americans were making is, no, it's because my faith that I lean left or right, or why I'm a part of this movement or not a part of that movement, or why I, rebel against this, or, right? So the question is, what is this faith that we're talking about? What does it look like to put our faith before politics? And so we looked at the politics of Jesus, and we learned that Jesus doesn't lean left or right, because that's not who he is, right? He's not partisan, but Jesus is very, very political, right? Jesus talked about how we're supposed to treat one another, and that's politics, right? You're supposed to love one another, forgive one another. And at the end of his ministry, Jesus prayed a prayer. Like we got a little sneak view into what Jesus' prayer request looks like. And Jesus' prayer request was this: that he wanted all of his followers, and remember his followers, there were Jews, and there were people who were in the poor class, there were people who were zealots, who were like all about insurrections, and right? And he said, once I'm gone, I don't know if my guys are going to get along. So he said, my prayer request, he's praying to his Father. And if there's like one prayer request that you should listen to, it's the one that Jesus gives, right? He says, here is my prayer request. My prayer request is this: that my followers would be one. He says, once I'm gone, like when Simon starts having an argument with Andrew, I'm usually there to make sure everything works out, right? But once I'm gone, I don't know if these guys, like their politics are going to get in the way. They're not going to get along. And so he prays to his Father in the book of John, please, we're doing all of this so that they can be one. And then we looked at Paul's writings. In Paul's writings, he says, here's a little nerd stuff for you if you're into like Bible trivia. But the Apostle Paul is known as the salvific apostle. What that means is he talks about salvation a lot. But there's one topic that he talks about more than salvation, and that is the church needs to get along. Like, that's his number one thing. He's like, can you guys, like, if you look at all the letters he's written in the New Testament, the main point of the letters are, come on, guys, you guys are supposed to get along. What are you guys fighting over this? Why are you hiring a lawyer? Why are you doing this? Why are you suing each other? Why, right? Please get along. So we looked at his letters, and through all that, we discovered last week that disagreement does not necessarily mean division. Disagreement is inevitable. It will happen. Whether if the whole church leans right or left, even within that circle, you guys are going to disagree about a lot of things. But division is a choice. Division is a choice. If we choose to love one another, we can choose not to divide over our disagreements. And we also talked about how one another, we're not the enemies. That person disagrees with me politically, but that doesn't make that person your enemy, right? That person is a person that Jesus died for, right? And you are somebody that Jesus died for. That our enemy is not against flesh and blood, right? So, but the world around us is trying to divide us. And so we talked about how we really need to have empathy. We have to learn to understand one another. We have to listen, we have to learn, and we have to love. So all of that, Jesus calls, he's like, that is the one thing I want everybody to get right. And so that thing that Jesus says is the cornerstone of everything that he's been teaching, we call it the law of Christ. The law of Christ. The law of Christ is this: love one another in the same way that Christ has loved us, right? And this, if you want to learn about what does it look like to have faith over politics, it's this. If you have this, then you are allowing your politics to be defined by your faith. So when you put the law of Christ above everything else, you start thinking about, well, what does it mean to win? If your political party wins, that's not considered a win in Jesus' book. Jesus never said, in order to win, you need to make sure that the left or the right. No, he never said that. It's like, you want to know what win looks like? A win looks like when you're able to love other people in the way that Christ has loved us. So we shouldn't have our allegiances to the left or the right or anything in between. We should have our allegiance to, well, according to my belief in Christ, the law of Christ, if I'm supposed to love others in the way that Christ has loved me, on this topic, I might side with this political party, but on that topic, I might actually be with this political party. We should be voting and we should be moving along with the idea of, well, which of these policies can help us love others in the way that Christ has loved me? Maybe sometimes that means instead of voting so you get your way, maybe we ought to be voting in the way that says, hey, I might need to cast my vote to help my neighbor instead of me. I know that's like, what? Okay. But I want to just make this clear with you guys. The early Christian church, the first century church, they laid their lives down for this, the law of Christ. They said, I'm willing to die so that the law of Christ could reign. And as a matter of fact, because of that, because the whole first generation of Christians decided to follow Jesus and follow the law of Christ, because of that, they changed the world. The unity that disrupted culture. The whole world looked at the church and said, why are they getting along? They shouldn't get along. There's something going on with these guys. There's been some archaeological digs, of the first century, and they were like, well, there's this one area in Italy, I think it's Pompeii, that's kind of frozen in time in the first century because there's like a big volcanic eruption. And they said, hey, if we do a dig there, we might be able to get a good glimpse at what the first century church looked like. And they did that. And when they went in and they dug through all the ashes and all the calcified things, what they discovered is that there were churches that met in homes. This is the first century. This is like not even 100 years after Jesus died. This is within that century. And what they discovered is that there were people who were of high stature and low stature. People who were masters and people who were slaves. People who were Roman guards and people who were Jews that came together and broke bread together. They got along. They differed politically, but they all committed to being one. This is exactly what Jesus was praying for. So people from diverse social circles who rarely cross paths, voluntarily and regularly gathered to worship Christ and were committed to unity. This is what they discovered about the first century church. They overcame together, they committed themselves to each other, and they committed to overcoming social prejudices. They came together and decided that they're going to overcome racism. They decided to look at each other in the eyes and said, I'm committed to making sure that there is no separation between us. While the world is saying, you guys don't belong together, they were like, no. We come together because of Jesus. They were saying, I know that there's rich and poor, but you know what? Stratification means nothing to us. We are going to be one today. There are cultural differences, even religious differences. You're like, I thought they were Christians. Like, yes, but some people come from a place where they sacrifice animals, and they're not allowed to eat animals to people. Then they were hanging out with people who eat pork on a daily basis, and they're like, how does that work? And this archaeological dig said, we don't know either, but it worked. They all got along. We don't know how they did it. And they said, well, and so the archaeologists couldn't figure out why they got along. And so they asked theologians, and theologians said, oh, that's simple. It's because of the law of Christ. That they decided and they committed themselves to loving one another in the way that Christ has loved them. Jesus is so different from us. Like, he's perfect and we're not, right? But he committed himself to us in the same way. They're like, well, if somebody that different from us committed themselves to us, then maybe we ought to do the same for the people around us. The law of Christ is the thing that kept them together. So, in the first century, one of the first church leaders, his name is Paul the Apostle, this is what he wrote in the book of Galatians. This is what he wrote. He says, in this way, you will fulfill the law of Christ. So in one of his letters that he wrote, Paul wrote, this is what you have to do in order to fulfill the law of Christ. And what do you think that thing is? I mean, if you have your Bible with you, you could look it up right now, but suspense, right? What is the thing that you have to do in order to fulfill the law of Christ? Paul is saying, like, if you do this one thing, then you're on a good path to doing the whole thing, right? This is what he says. Carry each other's burdens. Carry each other's burdens. And we talked about this last week. That means listen to people who are different from you. Learn from people who are different from you. Lean into the people who are different from you. And ultimately, love the people who are different from you. And if you can do that, and when your brother or sister is hurting, and you're saying, like, I don't know, that's not my world, but I feel your pain, and I'm going to carry that pain with you. If you do that, you are now fulfilling the law of Christ. You are one. And if we're able to do that, if you're able to carry one another's burdens, when we do that, the reason for division begins to vanish. Because now your hearts are connected, and the connection you have with somebody else, it goes deeper than the differences you have. Like baseball, right? Oh, I'm not for that team. But if you have that connection with that person, your relationship goes deeper than your allegiance to your baseball team, right? Okay, except for you, Paul. Paul's like, no, that's not true. Steve Lee, oh, he called you out, but you're part of our family. Regardless, right? You could be leaning left or right, and you say, but I felt the pain of the person on the other side of the aisle, and it goes deeper than your allegiance to your political parties. If you can carry one another's burdens, then the reason for division starts to vanish. And this is why, okay, in the same letter that Paul wrote, like, hey, if you carry one of those burdens, you're now fulfilling the law of Christ. In the same letter, Paul says, and I've seen it with my own eyes. I've seen this actually work. And because of that, he could write this. He says, when you guys carry one of those burdens, in Christ Jesus, you are all children of God. Like, you guys are children of God, but you're not. And I was like, no, everybody is a child of God through faith. And for all of you, were baptized into Christ, having clothed yourself with Christ. And he's talking about how, before we used to wear clothes that separated us, and now we're putting on, it's like metaphorical speech here, you're putting on something that unites you guys together. And then he says this, there is neither Jew nor Gentile, to which people will say, that's ridiculous. You're a Jew and you're a Gentile. What are you talking about? It's like, no. People were treated differently for being Jew or Gentile. In this church, no. There's no division. We don't even see that anymore. There's no more ethnic division because when we look at each other, we feel each other's burdens. We see beyond that now. And he says, there's no slave nor free. Back in those days, slavery it happened because you couldn't pay your bills. And you're like, I can't pay my bills. Can I sell myself to you? And they said, sure, right? And so it was not like so much like, oppression, but it was more of a economic thing, right? So what he's saying is there's no more rich nor poor. Imagine this, like you're a rich person, you're like, you mean God sees me the same as that person who is poor, who could barely pay his bills? Like, yes. And the poor person would say, you mean me who could barely pay my bills? God sees me the same as that rich person? It's like, yes. In the church, we're all the same. We're all one. We're all equal. There's no more stratification there. And he says, there's no more male nor female. It's like, wait a minute, what does that mean? Well, you got to remember in that culture, maybe even still today, right? Men have more privileges than women did. And they're like, in the church, we're all on equal footing. We're all on equal footing. In the church today, there's like a lot of discussion about, are women allowed to be pastors, right? Later on, we're going to find out that yes, because what we're going to do is we're going to look at a document that was discovered from the 1st century. And in there's actual evidence that there were female pastors. Anyways, that's later. I just ruined it for you guys, but okay. But what he's saying here is this. He says, there's no male nor female, meaning like when we see you, we see a child of God. We don't see, oh, you deserve more than this person. Why? Because for all, they're one in Christ Jesus. He could say that because he saw a congregation of people who carried each other's burdens, and it's like, oh, that is so beautiful. Because of that, let me tell you what's going to happen to you guys. There's no more division between Jew and Gentile now. There's no more division between slave or free, or there's no more division between male and female, because all of you guys have learned the secret of getting along. You're carrying each other's burdens. And if you're like, wow, that's cool. I wish our church was like that, right? I think we are, kind of. We're there. Okay. But here's the thing. This is not just a thing that happened 2,000 years ago. This type of unity was a core feature of the first church, the first churches. Like if this wasn't happening Paul would be on your back writing a letter to you saying, get along, because this needs to be the core thing about your church. And sometimes Paul will even write, and he'll give different reasons for why you need to do this. One of them, it's like, have you noticed how what people are saying about the church because you're not getting along? Like, that would be one of his things, right? Like, and it's like when my mom would be like, what if somebody sees you doing that? Stop it, right? That's what Paul is saying to the church. Sometimes he'll say like, do you not know that in the future, you're going to be inheritors of this earth? He's talking about eschatology. You don't have to know that now, but he's like, if you're going to be responsible for ruling the earth in the future, why can't you get along right now? Like, he uses different reasons, but all the things point to the same thing. Unity is a core feature of the church. And if people in the church can't get along, like, why are you a church? Right? But today I want to focus on this because I've been talking about this for the past few weeks. Today I want to take a slight turn and talk about how that affected the world, because the unity being a core feature has led the church to become a transformative agent to the world. I don't know if you guys know this, but these small groups of people who committed themselves to being one eventually transformed the world. As a matter of fact, Western civilization was based off of these churches. It was like if the church couldn't get along, Western civilization would look completely different. The church transformed Western civilization as we understand it. And here's the proof. And this is like, when I found this, I was like, this is so cool. Okay, so about 45 years after Paul passed away, so after he wrote the book of Galatians, a few years after that, he was sentenced to death and he died. And then 45 years after that, the Roman Empire, they spread even more. They're getting really powerful. And then, the person at this core, at the center of the Roman Empire is the Caesar or emperor. And, they would live and they would die, and the next emperor would rise to power and so forth. And then eventually there was this emperor, his name was Emperor Trajan, Trajan, Trajan. He was at the head, okay? And what he discovered was, while his empire was really, really big, he started hearing news that at the borders, at the fray of the empire, things started to fall apart. Like, he couldn't maintain control in these places around the Roman Empire. And, some emperors would be like, well, then we need to send more troops in there, or we need to make sure that, we establish stronger law. Emperor Trajan was like, no, let's approach it a little differently. Maybe the gods are angry with us because not everybody is offering sacrifices. And what I heard is that there's a small group of people popping up here and there called Christians, or they didn't call themselves Christians, they called themselves the Way. Everybody else called them Christians. And they said, I heard that they are not willing to worship any other gods. So maybe that's why our empire is starting to crumble. So he said, let's start by pointing our focus to what we call today Turkey. Now, at that time in Turkey, the person who was the governor of that region, his name is Pliny the Younger. Say hi to him. Hi. I know, people back then didn't like to smile. Somebody told me in my life group, like, I wish Mookie Betts would smile more often. I wish he would smile more often. Okay, anyways. So the emperor basically said, Pliny the Younger. He had an uncle who was called Pliny the Elder. That's why he got the word younger, but let's call him Pliny. Pliny was like, okay, what do you want me to do, emperor? I'm here to do whatever you tell me to do, sir, right? And he says, I want you to go and I want you to gather up the church and I want you to torture them until they submit and say that they're going to offer sacrifices to the gods. And he was like, okay, well, I could gather them, but I don't understand why we need to do this. You know what? Before I do that, I want to send in my own investigators to find out what this whole church thing, this whole Christian movement is all about. And he did this crazy investigation, and then he got all the reports, and he wrote a letter back to the emperor, and we have a letter. We have that letter, and you could look it up on Google too. You could find it and read the whole thing. I'm just going to show you a small part of it. But this is his report back to the emperor, and this is cool, because this is like an outsider's perspective of what the church was doing, right? Isn't that cool? Okay, I think it's cool. All right, thank you. Okay, here we go. Here's the letter. The sum and substance of their fault, because okay, you want me to find out what's wrong with this group of people called the Christians, right? Their fault and error had been, here's the thing that they were doing, kind of weird things that they were doing, that they were accustomed to meet on a fixed day before dawn. It's like, okay, this is what I discovered about the first century church. I discovered that they get together, and we know through history that it was a Sunday morning because Christians were accustomed to gathering on a Sunday morning because that was the day of the week that Jesus resurrected, right? It's like they do this weird thing. They gather together on Sunday mornings before the sun goes up. Now, back in those days, there was no such thing as weekends. They worked every day of the week. Weekends, having Sunday off is more of an American thing. So before that, they worked every day, right? So this would be akin to, let's just say not Sunday, but let's just say somebody came to Westlake and said, I have a report on Westlake Community Church. These guys, they wake up at 5 a.m. and they gather at this school on a Monday morning before they go to work, right? That's what it's like. So these guys are very dedicated. Remember, these are our people. This is us 2,000 years ago. So the question is, what did they do that early in the morning, right? So as an emperor, I want like, okay, well, these are weird people waking up at 5 in the morning to get together before work. Tell me more. What did they do? Did they like sacrifice goats and drink their blood? Like, what did they do, right? Because you don't know anything about this group of people called the Christians. What did they do? They sang songs responsively. They sang hymns to Christ as to a God. Like, you know what they do in the morning? They get together and they sing songs. Now, there's a reason for this. Back in those days, people were not literate. They didn't have the Bible. Bible didn't come for another 200 years, so they don't know. They had nothing to read. So the way that they shared, they got the message of Jesus out was through music, because music is a way to, like you guys probably learned so much about Jesus through the songs you sing more so than what I say from the pulpit or the floor, right? Isn't that true? Like you guys sing songs over and over and you're like, oh, that must be true because they sing. That's what they did. They sang songs and that's how they talked about Jesus. So like, yeah, they get together in the morning and they sing songs about theology. That's kind of, okay. But what else do they do? There must be something weird that they do that's upsetting the gods, right? Like what are they doing? Well, they're singing songs about Jesus. And they're singing about him as if he's divine. It's like, oh, that is weird. But that's not weird enough to offend the gods. What are they doing? It's like, well, he continues. He says, well, they bind themselves by oath. Like, there it is, the oath. What do they do? Like, they make an oath to destroy the empire? Is that what they're doing, right? Do they have an oath to, like okay, we will lay our lives down for insurrection or, like, to destroy or assassinate the emperor? Or, like, what is it? What is this dangerous oath that these people called Christians are doing? What are they doing? And so Pliny's like, well, no, it's like, it's not a crime. Like, what they're doing is not a bad thing. Well, tell me, what are they doing? Well, they made an oath not to commit fraud. Like these people get together in the morning and say, okay, we promise that we're not going to commit fraud. We're not going to do anything dangerous. We're not going to steal anything. No theft. Or adultery. We have made a commitment to each other that we're not going to cheat on anybody or falsify their trust. Wait, there's a group of people who get together early in the morning, they sing songs about Jesus, and they all make a promise to each other that they're not going to commit fraud, theft, adultery, or falsify their trust. Like, who? Like, ooh, that's dangerous, ooh, right? Like, we can't have people stealing, respecting others, and being trustworthy. That's dangerous, right? No. What he's saying here is this. What I found out about the church in the first century is that these are the finest people in the region. Like these people are not the problem. If anything, these guys are the reasons why our society is working so well. And not only that, what else do they do? Nor to refuse to return a trust when called upon to do so. They committed themselves to each other. When somebody is in need, the other person would come in and help that person. They committed themselves to the law of Christ. They said, no matter where we come from, no matter what your political leaning is, if you need help, I will be there for you. Well, you said you'll be there for me, right? But that was before I voted the other way. It's like, I don't care. I'm here for you. These people, their faith was greater than their politics. Their focus was to stay as one, just as Jesus prayed. And what's weird about this is that in that age in the Roman Empire, religion and worship was not tied to morality. Like you could go and do your thing at the temple and then go and do whatever you want. But this church movement, this Christian movement, for some reason, their worship of Jesus was directly tied to the way they treated the people around them. It's as if the law of Christ was saying that you're supposed to treat other people in the way that Christ has treated you, right? So to these people, it was like, we don't understand what's going on in the church. Why is the church acting this way? Why are they such outstanding citizens of our region? We don't understand. And all along, the Jesus followers are like, this makes complete sense to us. And then he says, and when this meeting was over, it was their custom to depart because they have to go to work. And what? And to assemble again to partake of food. Like, oh, okay, so after work they come back and they eat dinner together? Oh, wait, is this the part where they slit throats of goats and they drink their blood? Right, this is the part, right? Like the emperor is like, come on, there has to be something weird about these guys. And so Pliny's like, no, let me be very clear. No, ordinary food and innocent food. Like these guys, they would wait for other people to get, like people would be there at, 5 o'clock and they're like, well, there's so-and-so who's poor. So he has 2 jobs. And so let's wait until that person gets off work and then we'll break bread and eat together. Like these guys, they looked out for each other. We call that communion now, right? Where we all get together and we remind each other that we are all equals, that we're all communal, that we're all together. And so Pliny's like, I know this isn't the report you wanted to hear, Emperor. So I went an extra mile for you, just to make sure that you're happy because, maybe there's some bias in the way that we observed what was happening. So I did you one big favor, Emperor. He says this, accordingly, I judged it all the more necessary to find out what the truth was. Like, what's up with these people, right? By torturing 2 female slaves. So we wanted to make sure that we got this report right. So we kidnapped 2 people and we tortured them to get information out of them, who were called deaconesses. These are church leaders in the first century who were women. Right, anyways. But I discovered nothing else but, we tortured these guys. This is what we discovered. They're depraved, excessive superstition. They're like, I don't know, they believe this guy who died on the cross came back to life. They're crazy, woo, right? But they treat each other so well. We see no harm in them. We hit them hard and they turn the other cheek. What is up with these people? They're always committed to being one. What's up with these people? We don't get it. All we found was that they believe in this guy who died on the cross and rose on the 3rd day. That crazy, we know, yeah, but they believe that stuff, right? Where is this commitment coming from? The first generation of churches committed to the law of Christ. That's what's going on here. And like I said earlier, their unity, it transformed the world. It changed the world. And while the empire looked at that from the outside saying, that is just the craziest thing. What, they're not going to betray each other to get to the top, or they're not going to do that? That's just weird, right? So from the empire perspective, that was appalling. But as it turns out, people who were not in the empire, everybody else, they didn't see this appalling. They saw this as appealing. And the reason we know that is because the latter part of the letter, this is what he wrote. This is what Pliny wrote. The contagion, this is like a disease that's spreading, right? The contagion of Christianity, of this superstition, has spread not only to cities, but also to villages and farms. It's like, Your Majesty, I don't know what's going on. This is like the weirdest thing we've ever seen. These guys are committing to each other. People who are slaves and masters are loving on each other. What's going on? Jews and Gentiles getting along. We don't understand. What's right? They're not committing adultery with somebody else's wife. They're not doing that stuff. They're weird. But the people in the cities like this message. There are people in the villages who are buying into this. People who work in farms, they're like, this is the best thing we've ever come across, right? What is the appeal of this movement? Well, what we learned from our history is this, that women were treated with respect. What we also learned is that abandoned babies in the first century were adopted. I don't know if you know this, but in the Roman Empire, they had this rule about how male babies were more important than female babies. So when they had a rule eventually where they could only have one baby, what they would do is when they had a baby girl, they would be like, just toss it out. Sometimes they'll toss it out into the streets. Sometimes they'll toss the baby out. They go into the woods, and the outskirts of the woods, they will just toss the baby, hoping that one of the animals would eat it up or something, right? The Christians, history books tell us that Christians went down the streets picking up these babies. They went into the woods looking for abandoned babies, and they adopted them, and they raised them, educated them, clothed them, because they were committed to being one. And you know what? It's not just one family. It wasn't up to the family to raise the baby. The whole community of the church helped raise these babies. They also sacrificed themselves for others. They're like, if Jesus loved us by sacrificing himself, then maybe we need to do that for our brothers and sisters. And we also know that they shared their things with one another. There's somebody in need. I have too much. You know what? I'll give you some things, some of my things. And it's not like they were like, my only car, I'm going to give it to you. They said, we have 2 cars. I'm not using one. I don't really need another car. You could have it. Like, that's how they operate. So much so in the book of Acts, it says that no one in the fellowship had any need. Why? Because they committed to each other. They carried one another's burdens. They lived according to the law of Christ. When the world looked at the church, there was like, there's a master, there's a slave, there's a Jew, there's a Gentile, there's a man, there's a female. But the early church, you know what they did? The early church replaced the cultural labels of individuals with the true labels that Christ had given them. The culture will say, you're a slave and you're a master. And the church would say, but that's not the label that God gave you and you. So we're not going to call you that. We're not going to recognize you as slave and master. Culture has said that you're a commoner and that you are a nobleman. But Jesus didn't see that. Every time a person looked at somebody, it's like, well, you know what I see? I see an image of God. I see a child of God. I see somebody Jesus died for. And that is how the first century church grew, right? They became examples for the society around them, so much that they overpowered the empire. They didn't take down the empire by fighting them. They just outlasted them. The empire eventually collapsed upon itself, but the church continued to grow. How do they do that? It's because of Galatians chapter 6. Carry each other's burdens in the way you will fulfill the law of Christ. In this way, you will fulfill the law of Christ. Carrying one another's burdens, having empathy. And the first century empire looked at that and said, you know what Christianity is? It's like a pandemic. It's a disease that keeps spreading as if it was a bad thing. But everybody else is like, this is a beautiful thing. I love that my entire life I was treated this way, in a way that was less than human, but a group of people are now welcoming me in, thinking that I am a human being, that I'm treated as a human being. This is like a big thing for them. And they're like, yes, I would like to join that. Imagine if you're one of the babies that was abandoned on the side, a baby girl, and you're raised by the church and let them know you have value because you are an image of God. Imagine that woman growing up to be a mother and how that mother is going to raise her children. You see how the movement grows organically. And so for that reason, Christianity has outlasted the biggest empire of our history. All because they didn't let politics shape the church. They let their faith shape their politics. It eventually shaped Western civilization. So I hope what we learn from this, the history lesson and from the Bible is this, that our unity amidst the current political division is paramount. It is the most important thing. Even if we disagree politically, even if one side is doing something that's so disgusting to the other side, that we will commit to being one. Because remember, this was Jesus' prayer request. His prayer request, Holy Father, protect them, his followers, by the power of your name, the name you gave me, so that they may be one as we are one. That was his prayer request. Paul the Apostle, when he was thinking about he was looking at a church, another church called the church in Ephesus. And he's like, how can I help these people become one again? And so he's pleading with them, please get along, please get along. This is what he wrote. And this is a different translation of the Bible. It's called the Message because it's easier, more street language. This is what Paul wrote to this church. Instead of continuing with two groups of people separated by centuries of animosity and suspicion, he created a new kind of human being, a fresh start for everybody. Christ brought us together through his death on the cross. This is what Paul is saying. You guys are divided, and for centuries you couldn't get along. He's not talking about political divide here. He's talking about Jews and Gentiles. But either way, it's the same idea here. You guys can't get along. So you know what God did? He gave us a new human being, Jesus. And through him, when he died on the cross, he was able to show his love for both sides. He continues, he says, the cross got us to embrace, and that was the end of the hostility. He treated us as equals, and so made us equals. Through him, we both share the same spirit and have equal access to the Father. He says, guys, we are committing ourselves to this new human, a human that is all embracing, not the old humanity that where we find every reason to divide. He's like, while the world might be dividing over these things, we as Christians need to stay together. So what does it mean to put our faith before politics? Putting priority on faith? Having an unwavering commitment to being a united humanity. And that is what God has called us to do in the midst of our political divide. Yes, we will disagree on a lot of things. Some things that are very important, some things that could be just like as simple as a sporting event, right? But no matter what, our unwavering commitment is to be one. And through that, I'm hoping that we could be the community. A community that God envisioned when he died on the cross. It's like, when I die on the cross, I'm hoping to create a community of people who are able to be one. Amen? All right, let's pray.